Hello, you're listening to The Rare Brew, a podcast for parents and caregivers of children and adults with ADNP Syndrome or other rare genetic conditions. I am your host, Christy Carter Gibson. Today is a very special episode because I have Miranda Castaneda here to talk about the new parent advocacy group that she's spearheading.
Hi, Christy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
So, I have had the great pleasure of chatting with Miranda over the past few months as I've been working on this project and she's been working on the new parent advocacy organization. So, I thought it might be nice, Miranda, just to start off, if you could share a little bit about your ADNP kiddo. His name's Carter, right? And he's a little bit younger than my son, but I feel like they have so much in common.
Yes, so he's 9, about to be 10 years old in September. So we're about to hit a big milestone, turning 10. But Carter is the oldest of three. So he has a younger brother who is 5, and then a younger sister who is about to be 3 years old, actually. So we are a family of 5. And gosh, there's so much to say of Carter, but I think probably one of my just most favorite things to share about him is love for music. That was something that just very early on, he was able to hear a nursery rhyme and repeat it on like a little Paw Patrol like piano on the floor. And then that transpired into him getting an actual piano and dad teaching him, just various songs that has really grown into just a full passion for him. He goes to piano lessons every Tuesday, and recently singing has been something that he has really enjoyed doing. He sang for a school or his school district's Special Olympics called the Spring Games. So he sang in front of thousands of people. This was just a few weeks ago. And then shortly after that, he sang for a pep rally and has an upcoming national anthem performance this Friday. So music has been truly such a just joy for Carter and our whole family. And then I think like most kiddos with sensory processing disorder, he just loves anything water. He could swim for hours. He loves being in the pool and outdoors. So if you have music or a pool, he is your best friend.
So, Miranda, let's talk about advocacy and your journey. Um, with ADNP syndrome. So, you go from having a diagnosis to imagining this parent advocacy organization for your kid and for all of our kids. And then you make the leap and you start this organization. So, share a little bit about that journey, what that looked like for you.
So, our journey to the ADNP syndrome diagnoses started at about 6 months old. We were living in Missouri because my husband is in the Army. He's active duty. And at that time, we went in for Carter's 6-month well baby appointment. He was babbling, he was sitting up, he was rolling, he was eating his baby food. And the appointment went really well. The pediatrician did not have any concerns at that time. So I left that appointment, of course, a happy mama. A few days later, I received letters in the mail from our insurance indicating, hey, you have these referrals and these are the doctors you've been assigned to. One was for an audiologist for a hearing test, and then the other was for an optometrist for a vision test. So immediately I call the pediatrician's office and say, hey, what's going on? Why were these referrals entered? And the nurses couldn't give me an answer. So finally, the pediatrician got on the phone and said, hey, I'm currently studying, these rare genetic disorders. Your son's facial features are consistent with one of these disorders I'm studying. So I'd like for you all to just take him to these specialists and rule out that there is nothing going on with vision and hearing. So of course, I am just panicking and overanalyzing, scared, all of the things. We go to these appointments, everything checks out normal, and then a few weeks later we move. So my husband received orders to move to Texas, and we moved. We got Carter his 9-month appointment, and this is an appointment that I don't think I will ever forget, because we bring Carter in, and the pediatrician, basically says, well, of course there's something wrong with him. Haven't you seen other children? And I remember just feeling like gutted and, crying into my husband's arms in the parking lot after, because it was just so defeating to hear someone talk that way. And he's our firstborn. He was perfect in our eyes. And so to hear those words come out of a provider's mouth was just so hurtful. So we switched providers. At that time, Carter was inching closer to being 1 year old, and he wasn't crawling, wasn't talking, wasn't walking. So at that point, we started to get worried that something was off, but we weren't, too concerned. And a few more months passed by, still not meeting those milestones. So our new pediatrician, who we love and have been with for 9 years, she went ahead and put in a referral to a geneticist. So we went to San Antonio, and myself, Carter, and my husband, we all got our labs drawn, and the labs were sent out for genetic testing. We later, maybe a couple months later, returned back to San Antonio, and we received the diagnosis of ADNP syndrome. At that time, there was maybe 150 individuals diagnosed with ADNP syndrome. So our geneticist, which I truly think changed the course of how my husband and I just perceived the diagnosis. She came in with just very limited information. She printed off some websites for us, and she said, listen, Carter is going to write his story, and you all need to keep a journal, keep record of everything that he goes through, because there is no story of ADNP syndrome out there. He's one of hundreds that have this. So you all need to allow him to write his story and to share his story with others. And I think her putting that into perspective was just in such a positive light and really empowered my husband and I. And so we later returned to our car that day and just sat there, just kind of soaking it all in. And my husband, turned to me and said, listen, we can be sad, we can grieve, but it's not going to change the fact that we still have this little boy that we have to be present for, that we have to take care of. So we can take one day to be sad, but this is still the same boy that we walked into the hospital with, and the same little boy that we're walking out with, and we have to make the most of it. And so that's truly been our approach to ADNP syndrome, and just letting Carter write his story and guide us through, because there is nothing out there that is a guidebook for ADNP syndrome. And I think that kind of leads into the question of how did it lead us to starting the Parent Network? So the ADNP Parent and Caregiver Support Network of Hope is truly designed to have the goal in mind to walk through parents and their child, walk them through what the diagnosis is, what resources there are, and truly just be a community of hope in that you are not alone on this journey, and that there are others out there that are here for you and are going to help your family find the resources, find the community that you need to help in the day-to-day journey of a rare disease.
Wow, what a journey you guys had. So you are calling the organization the ADNP Syndrome Parent and Caregiver Support Network of Hope. So, what's the focus? It sounds like you're going for a more family centered mission.
The overarching vision for the ADNP Syndrome Parent and Caregiver Network of Hope is truly to provide a community of support and to give back to the families and caregivers who have a child or family member with ADNP syndrome.
So, what values are at the core of your advocacy work? Like, what's going to really be the focus of the organization in terms of what it's trying to achieve for families?
A value that I think is at the core of my advocacy work is truly that of compassion. I think that in, listening to our journey, you would definitely recognize that we were not given a lot of compassion by Carter's first two pediatricians. And so I think it is so important to truly have that at the forefront of our minds when we are deciding how to run this organization, because a lot of families probably went through similar experiences where, the diagnosis was given in an abrupt nature, or, families are likely feeling as though they're left to just figure it out because there isn't a lot out there as to how to treat ADNP syndrome. So one of the things that I truly believe is that we have to lead with compassion. We have to open our arms to these families who are newly diagnosed, or maybe even families that have had the diagnosis for a while but are going through a really scary time in their child's medical journey. Another value that I think is at the core for this organization is providing a community, providing that safe space, and allowing families to freely share resources and, begin to collaborate with specialists, with therapists, with special education teachers on how we can meet our children where they're at now and provide support for families where they're at now.
So, what does success look like in this organization? We're going to support families, we're going to help them meet their children where they are, but how are you going to determine whether you've succeeded in that mission?
I think defining success is truly going to be measured in the amount of maybe messages or responses from families saying thank you. I felt alone when we received this genetic diagnosis, and I found this page, this community, and now I feel at home. I feel like there is a safe space for me and my child. So I don't think that numerically there's going to be an end number for that, but I think just being able to help even one family in finding this community and teaching them how to walk through this journey with us is what will define our success.
So, what are your top 3 priorities for advocacy right now in the world of ADNP syndrome and really all rare diseases, but focusing on your organization, ADNP syndrome? What are the top priorities in your mind?
The top 3 advocacy priorities I have for this organization, number 1 is going to be awareness and education. So creating social media posts and campaigns that allows our families to share information regarding ADNP syndrome. So just making sure we have a larger reach, and we can do that through social media. Also, sharing the stories of our ADNP kiddos and adults is really important to this awareness, because the more we can share about what our kiddos are going through, the more awareness we are going to bring to this rare disorder. Next, I would say is in doing that and doing education and awareness is going to lead to earlier diagnosis in individuals who maybe have symptoms that are similar to that of ADNP syndrome. So I think that is huge. We need to educate not only the communities, but our medical population on what ADNP syndrome is, so that way we can have earlier diagnosis via the genetic testing. And then lastly would be really just driving the medical field to research this disorder. The more we share, the more medical eyes we have on this disorder, the more therapeutic treatments there may be, whether that is therapies, whether that is medication. So those are the three priorities that I foresee the organization focusing on at this time.
That sounds like it's quite the task to balance the immediate needs of the families that are affected by ADNP syndrome, like looking out for the good of the kids and ensuring that families have what they need to support their children. And then also this like long-term goal of helping advance research and policies and all of those big things. So, how do you strike that balance?
I truly believe the balance between short-term goals and long-term overarching goals, such as advancing research and medical opportunities, is going to center around the awareness and education portion. So kind of going back to sharing, whether that be stories of ADNP individuals, making campaigns online, social media. I mean, it all really goes back to that whole aspect of the more we share, the more individuals will be aware, and that is then going to lead or drive those long-term goals for research and medical opportunities.
So, education and awareness. Do you think there's any particular gap in awareness or care or research that you think the public and professionals need to understand?
I think the biggest gap is that of lack of knowledge, lack of information, lack of awareness. When Carter was diagnosed with ADNP syndrome, like I said earlier, his geneticist had very limited information about the syndrome. And so, being that geneticists, medical providers, specialists are just not aware of this syndrome, I don't even think that it is on their radar when an individual or child comes in with delayed milestones, cardiac issues, GI issues, mobility issues. I think that a lot of medical providers are going to start investigating those more widely known syndromes. So I think the gap truly is just lack of knowledge, because there is so few that are diagnosed worldwide with ADNP syndrome. And that's what makes these organizations such as the Network of Hope so important, because our goal and our main focus is really going to be that of making sure awareness is there, education is there, and that we are sharing everything that we know worldwide with one another and the medical community, and making sure that ADNP syndrome is on the radar of medical specialists so that early diagnosis can occur. We hear so many stories of kiddos that have their genetic testing later in life. And so when they do learn of the ADNP syndrome diagnosis, there are so many things that maybe could have been initiated at an earlier age that could have led to better outcomes, for example, in communication or mobility. So I really think education awareness is just the biggest focus that we have to push forward, because there is a huge gap in the rare disease community in knowledge regarding rare disease syndromes.
Yes, having professionals understand the signs of ADNP syndrome and other rare genetic conditions, so important. My son didn't get diagnosed with ADNP syndrome until after his 11th birthday. So it was quite a long time we went without having a diagnosis. And it really was because he had all these seemingly disjoint effects that I now know are attributable to ADNP syndrome, but at the time they just seemed so disjoint. And our geneticists, all of the people that were looking into this, aren't familiar with ADNP syndrome because it is so rare. So I see a lot of value in making it a little bit more known, at least having the rare community feel empowered to share their stories with one another. So if you do have a child that is exhibiting a wide range of seemingly disparate conditions, you can go look at the wealth of knowledge of all these advocacy groups like this one that you're starting and say, hey, my kid has some similarities there. Maybe we should look into this condition as well. What do you think has worked and what hasn't worked when it comes to building community among parents and caregivers affected by ADNP syndrome? So, how do you see the parent network improving the cohesion of our community moving into the future?
When creating a community for families with individuals with a rare disease, I think that what works the best is going to be that online forum. ADNP syndrome, for example, individuals diagnosed, there's maybe 500, a little bit more, a little bit less worldwide. So even within Texas, which is where my family lives, there are other families within Texas that have a child with ADNP syndrome, but we've never met. They live 8-9 hours away. So there's just not much proximity amongst the families worldwide, globally. So I know that online forum is truly going to be the best option for creating a community. And I think that ultimately our goal is to start, fundraising so that families within a certain region, like for example, maybe families in Texas, New Mexico, California, can figure out a location that is central to those 3 states and start getting together and having quarterly or annual get-togethers, focused on collaboration and just that camaraderie that comes with understanding one another. So that's ultimately a goal that I would like to see put forward within the ADNP Syndrome Network of Hope, is fundraising to support those regional support groups and get-togethers. So those are things that I think we kind of failed at as a group, at least now and previously, is that we really haven't had the opportunity to get together often. And so a lot of the contact is virtual, which is great. We live very busy lives when we have a child with rare disease, and a lot of us work and have other kids. So that online community is great, but I think we can fill that gap by starting to support regional get-togethers amongst families to create that community feel.
So, moving beyond the support for families with ADNP syndrome, what are some of the big goals that you have for the organization? Are there any collaborations or partnerships that you're really excited about?
I think collaborations are just such an exciting opportunity for nonprofit organizations or volunteer groups, because it really allows for more education, more awareness. I think the collaboration, like the dream collaboration, would be to work with the DME company, for example, Riften. Very early on, we recognized that walking was something Carter truly struggled with. And so one of our awesome physical therapists put in an order for a gait trainer, and that gait trainer really changed things for Carter. He was able to crawl, at age 1, a little bit after, but everything that he saw was at the level of crawling. So he would crawl throughout the home, but he was just on that floor level. He couldn't see our faces. He couldn't see, all that there was to offer and interact with. And so when we got him into the gait trainer, he was finally standing up straight. He could see the world. And I just felt that that led to so much exploration and confidence. And I always like to share this story. It's like one of my most favorite moments from when Carter started using his gait trainer. We lived in this really awesome gated community, and all the kiddos would play at the park. And so Carter loved to be outdoors, and we would walk him in the gait trainer to the park, and he'd watch the kiddos, obviously not able to engage with them, whether that was playing football, catch, playing on the playground. But one of these little boys came up to Carter and was just so kind, was pushing him around in his gait trainer, pushing him in circles, making him smile and laugh. And so that gait trainer really opened up Carter's eyes to the world. It helped to teach him how to stand upright and helped him build strength, because he did suffer and still does suffer from hypotonia or low muscle tone. So then once he started walking, another physical therapist in the school setting actually placed an order or support letter for his primary care to order Carter a modified bicycle or tricycle. And again, that was through Riften. And so, I really think collaboration with those types of companies is going to be the ultimate goal, because we've been very lucky in that my husband, who's in the Army, our insurance covers all of this. Whereas there are insurances that families can't even get basic therapies that their kiddos need. So you're definitely not going to get these, gait trainers and tricycles. They're not going to get them for free. That's going to be out of pocket. So I would love to work with Riften and just get these, necessary devices to our kiddos.
I think a partnership with a DME, a durable medical equipment company, would be an absolute dream for our community for sure. So I really, really hope that we can make that a reality. But I wanted to ask a question, get your thoughts. What do you think parents and caregivers, do they have a role, a place in shaping medical research or clinical care and doing that sort of advocacy work at this organization?
Parents of individuals with ADNP syndrome are truly the voice of this disorder. So I foresee moving forward that parents are going to continue to play a vital role in driving research and awareness. I mean, you look at the network of hope that we've created, we've got about 8 individuals that are from, across the globe, that are parents that are, in the trenches, and they are the ones that are fighting for their children, fighting for the community. So I'm really excited to work with these parents and to expand with committees that are fueled by parents and their family members. So yeah, I think parents, family members, caregivers, we are going to be the ones that continue to drive research and education regarding ADNP syndrome.
I love that. I really want to see our parents and our community become empowered to participate in the process, to really help with every aspect of advocacy for ADNP syndrome and for rare diseases, because I think that is really important. So we're closing out and getting wrapped up here a little bit, but I wanted to ask you to share what makes you hopeful about this work. What's exciting you about advocacy for ADNP syndrome right now?
The hope that I feel in regards to ADNP syndrome really centers around all of the milestones that the children are making, as well as seeing the kiddos getting diagnosed earlier and earlier. Of course, I recognize that the diagnosis is hard. There's so much unknown, but we truly are seeing better outcomes for those individuals that are diagnosed at an earlier age, because you're able to initiate intensive therapies from, very early stages. So I really think that now that we are seeing children get diagnosed, right at infancy or in early toddler years, because that is showing that the work being done is working and that more people are learning and testing for ADNP syndrome. And so that in and of itself is giving so much hope to the rare disease community. But then also going back to the milestones, when parents are sharing those first words or those first steps, that is all what gives me so much hope for this disorder.
Yes, I always love seeing all of the kids' little updates and things that they're doing, especially all the firsts. I love that. All the sweet little babies. I get to remember when I was in that stage, and it gives me a lot of hope to see kids older than mine sort of achieve things that I'm working on so hard with my son right now. So I agree. Such a blessing to have access to a community and just share our kids' successes. So, last question for us and our discussion here, Miranda. If you could speak directly to parents who just received an ADNP diagnosis for their child, what would you say to them? What would be your message?
I've been really lucky to interact with families who have just received their ADNP diagnosis. My son Carter, he has an Instagram account that I run under Courageous Carter, and I utilize a lot of the hashtags such as hashtag ADNP, hashtag ADNP Syndrome. And so I think a lot of families instantly go to social media searching for, ADNP Syndrome just to see if there are any local families that they can just reach out to. So I've been on the receiving end of that, and it's such a good feeling to have parents reach out and say, hey, I saw your videos, your photos of Carter, and they've given me and my family so much hope. So whenever I respond to those parents, I let them know and will continue to let them know that they are not alone on this journey and that we truly are a community that works together and are trying to move mountains for our kiddos, and that the community in and of itself is going to be your biggest source of information. And so I truly thank our families for recreating the ADNP community, because we did have a private forum that no longer exists, and there were years and years of information that was on that forum. So we've had some families kind of recreate that, and we're building back into that knowledge base and sharing resources. And so I just like to provide reassurance that, you're not alone. We are in this together, and that you truly just have to focus on the child that is in front of you and learn as much as you can about ADNP syndrome, about syndromes that are similar, so that you can utilize resources from all different areas to help support your child. So yeah, I try to instill positivity and hope, because I know that it's a tough journey when trying to determine, what your child's diagnosis is. It can be so defeating, so isolating. So I really try to stay positive, hopeful, and just provide resources to family members so that they don't feel alone.
Yes, I don't think we could overstate how big of a loss it was to lose that previous community and the wealth of knowledge that was there. I know when I first got Lizard's diagnosis, I went on the parents support group that existed on Facebook, and I spent weeks just scrolling through and seeing what parents were talking about, and it was so helpful to have some similarities with this community of people for the first time. Just knowing that there were other families out there who understood what my son was going through, what we had gone through with him, it was just such a blessing for us. And I really am excited to see our community really rise to the occasion and work to try and regain that knowledge base for new families and for old families too, because it's been useful for all of us. So, unfortunately, I think that that is all of the time that we have. We are already at like 35 minutes now of this conversation. So,
Yeah, we could probably talk for hours. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all the questions for you related to like boyhood and,
yeah.
crossing over into the preteen. So I can't wait to like learn more from you.
Yes, I would love to have more conversations with you in the future. I hope I can have you back on the show at some point and maybe we can talk boys. That would be fun to get like a handful of moms together and discuss that. But that's all the time we have for today, unfortunately. For those of you listening to our conversation, thank you so much for joining us for this very special edition of the Rare Brew. If you would like to have more information about the ADNP Syndrome Parent and Caregiver Network of Hope that Miranda is spearheading, please see the description below for a link to their Facebook page and be on the lookout for additional information as that organization gets up and running. I hope that this episode filled your cup a little bit for your week, and thank you so much for supporting the show and listening in. And I hope to see you all back here in a few weeks, and we will have some more conversations about anything and everything ADNP syndrome for all of our families. So thank you so much for joining us.